Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. Today we'll be discussing managing fatigue in multiple sclerosis. Your presenter is Andrea Salmon and my name is Andrea Salmon and I'm your facilitator. We begin all our programs with an acknowledgement. We acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians past and present on whose lands we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and the relationship of Aboriginal people to country, and we respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. It's my great pleasure to introduce you to Andrea Salmon, who is our presenter today. Andrea is one of the Education and Wellbeing Program Coordinators here at MS. She started at MSL many years ago. She initially started as an occupational therapist and she has actually held many roles since that time. Andrea believes that knowledge is power and wants people living with MS to feel supported and empowered to make informed decisions regarding living well with multiple sclerosis. So I'm going to hand over to Andrea now, who will switch on her webcam to say hi.
Thank you so much, Annie. Yes, I started here when I was a child and I've been here ever since. Let's see if I can get this to turn on and so you can see me. Hi, everyone. And it's exciting. We're actually back in the office today. So we've had to kind of, do the whole reconfigure. Now we're here and things are a little bit different to what they were at home. So nice to see you all online. So today we're going to be focusing on fatigue. That's what today's all about and that's what you're here for. So we'll have a little think about what fatigue is, but we're going to really focus today on management strategies for fatigue. So we're going to also think about some of the contributing factors to your experience with fatigue and how you might put some of the strategies that we're going to talk about into practice and then where to go for follow-up. So really, there are a whole lot of symptoms that people with MS might experience, and it is a might because people have different experiences of the symptoms of MS, depending where the inflammation is happening or where the damage to the central nervous system is happening. But by and large, we know that the majority of people living with MS experience fatigue. It gets rated as like 80% of people living with MS experience fatigue, and for about 80% of people it's one of their worst symptoms. So we know it's incredibly disabling in terms of stopping you doing the things that you want to do every day. And we can't cure MS, we can't get rid of all the symptoms that you might experience, but we can certainly go a long way to helping you manage the symptoms and to still do the things you want to do and get enjoyment from and value from, despite the symptoms that you might be experiencing. So let's have a think about what fatigue is. Look, it's very subjective because everybody experiences it differently, but again, in a nutshell, it's a lack of physical and or mental energy that you recognise in yourself or your family members might see in you, and it interferes with the things you want to do each day. Now, as we have just captured in that little quote, which is getting a bit old now, but it's still so true. For some people, the fatigue they experience is very physical. And it interrupts the things you want to do, whether it's anything that requires physical activity. For other people, it's not so much the physical stuff, but it's more around the cognitive things. So the concentrating or the thinking activities that we do each day. That's where they notice the fatigue more has more impact. So it's normal for everyone to feel tired. So when you say to someone you're experiencing fatigue, by and large, they're going to say, oh, me too, life's so tiring. But the experience for someone living with MS is quite different. We will talk a bit about normal fatigue because the contributing factors that we'll come to in a bit are the same contributing factors for anyone, but people living with MS perhaps have a greater likelihood of experiencing fatigue because of the contributing factors. And they're in that category of everyday fatigue. So that's what I experience, that's what Annie experiences, that's what you experience as well. But on top of that, when you're living with MS, you're also likely to experience MS fatigue. And MS fatigue has two labels. One is lassitude, and that tends to refer to that overwhelming feeling of tiredness that doesn't actually relate to what you've been doing. So I've had people say to me, you know, I was just on the couch, but then I just couldn't get up and make tea. I wasn't doing anything that made me earn that fatigue. If I have a day on the couch, I should be able to still get up and do stuff. So it's that concept of an unearned fatigue, and that gets the label of lassitude. People say it's hitting the wall, that kind of experience. The nerve fibre fatigue, or the neuromuscular fatigue, is somewhat different to that. That seems to be more related to the nerves having to fire to complete an activity. So we see that very much in any activity that is repetitive in nature. And when we stop and think about it, so many of the things we do every day have a repetitive component to them. Walking, it's the same nerves firing to have that action of step after step, walking. So a lot of people find that they're okay when they start off on their walk, but partway around the block, one foot starts to catch, their toe starts to catch on the ground, and they feel like they're going to stumble because their ability to walk has sort of declined. That's that nerve fibre fatigue. If they stop and have a rest, they're back walking fine. The cognitive version of the nerve fibre fatigue can be experienced in things like finding that you can't read like you used to be able to read and follow a story page after page. Now you find that a couple of pages in and you're not following what you're reading. That's that nerve fibre fatigue kicking in. For other people, it's around decision making at the end of the day, when you've had a full-on day and now people are coming at you with making decisions and asking you questions, and it's that burden of fatigue that makes the cognitive activities difficult. So we'll talk a little bit about how you might manage that. But I'm interested to know what your experience of fatigue is. So Annie, do you want me to run the poll? Because I've got the lovely mouse that you don't have.
Yes.
So I'll launch a poll, just finding out, and this is a great way for you to know that you're not alone as well with your experience of fatigue. And you can respond, I believe, to as many of these as you want to. So, no, actually, it might be one. You might have to pick which one. So what's your experience of fatigue? Is it just overwhelming tiredness all the time? Is it overwhelming tiredness that comes on in the afternoon? Or do you find for you it's an inability to complete some physical activities? Or maybe in your situation you've noticed it's the inability to complete some thinking activities or social activities. Or maybe you're just online today because you're interested and you're not actually experiencing MS fatigue. As predicted, no one is ticking that one at the moment. You're very welcome to be here for that reason, but I think most people will be finding that fatigue has an impact for them. So partly these polls will elicit a response from you, but partly it's to show that it really is an experience that a lot of people are having. So if you want to vote in this poll, you just use your mouse, hover over the dot that's beside the response that fits for you, and click on that, and you should see that. So a few more people want to respond, and then we'll close that off. That's okay. Some people can't perhaps respond. I'll close that and I'll show you the results. So we've got a third of the group today recognising that for them it's overwhelming tiredness all the time. And we'll have a little talk about that in a bit. For 28% of the people online today, it's overwhelming tiredness that comes on in the afternoon. That's that one that gets called lassitude. About the same number of people finding that they can't complete thinking or social activities. And that is really limiting, isn't it, for your personal life. And then we've got some people, 11%, noticing that they can't complete some of the physical activities that they want to. So it's a shared experience, guys. You're not alone. You're not making it up. You're not imagining it. It's a phenomenon that's part of MS. So let's start off by having a look at some of the things that can contribute to fatigue, and actually some of the things that we perhaps have a little bit more control over. I'd like this to be some of the things that you might jot down to follow up at the end of the program. So pen and paper at hand. My questions are you sleeping poorly? Could that be contributing to your fatigue? And maybe it's important for you to address some of the reasons that you might not be sleeping well. Now, we have another whole program on sleep well, and I'd say go over to the podcast area on our website or to the webinar recordings, like the library there, to have a look for more about sleep. But if you're not sleeping well, that is the number one thing you need to think about and address in regard to managing your fatigue. And are you actually getting enough rest during the day? Are you taking breaks during the day? And we'll talk about this in a bit, so that you can pace yourself and pace your energy. Are you feeling consistently low or flat? Maybe your mood has been impacted by MS, and this will be absolutely having an impact on the fatigue that you experience. You can actually get some subsidised visits to a psychologist to explore depression and look at strategies for overcoming some of the depression or the mood changes that you might be experiencing. That's a great thing to talk to your GP about. That's a program that your GP can put you on so that you can access the wonderful support of a psychologist at a reduced rate. Are you eating a healthy, well-balanced diet? Is this perhaps something that could be contributing to your fatigue? If you're not eating well, if you're not drinking enough water during the day, you might need to get that sorted, because that might be the key thing that helps manage your fatigue. And again, there's another program where you can access allied health practitioners at a subsidised rate through your GP, and that could be a nutritionist. Might be a really worthwhile visit to sort out, are you eating well to manage your fatigue? And we'll revisit that in a little bit as well. Are you doing enough physically? Are you getting some regular aerobic exercise? Could you perhaps think about doing more? Do you need some advice from a physio? Again, whether it's through your NDIS plan or through a conversation with your GP, you might be able to access some support of a physio or an exercise physiologist. And even though it sounds double Dutch, I'm fatigued, but you're telling me to exercise, we actually know it is the number one way to help combat fatigue. Challenging, but evidence is showing that. What about the impact of heat? During the summer months, do you find your fatigue is worse? Again, we've got another whole session on coping with the heat, but it could be that managing a few strategies to manage the heat would be a great way to help manage your fatigue. And then last on the list there is medications. Now, sometimes people find that they're taking a medication that actually has a side effect of fatigue. So a good conversation could be with your pharmacist to talk about alternative medications that have the same positive effect but doesn't necessarily have the negative effect of the fatigue that might come with the medication. That could be a good time for a pharmacy review. It's also worth at this stage thinking about medications that can help manage fatigue. Now, we and all the literature would say that lifestyle factors are the most effective way to help manage fatigue in MS. But for some people, they do actually need to have a conversation with their neurologist about the extreme nature of their fatigue and whether there are some medications that could be helpful in their situation. I wouldn't recommend it as your first port of call, but it's certainly worthwhile if you've tried everything and you've done it in a really concerted and diligent way, and your fatigue is still not being helped, it would be worth having a conversation with your neurologist. So even from that, I'm going to run another poll. Even from that little conversation right up front, is there one of those contributing factors that you've already identified that you maybe need to address or change? So maybe for you, it's that, yes, you've even just that prompt about looking at your sleep might be the thing that would make a difference. Or maybe you straight away thought, yep, I reckon it's my diet. It could be contributing. Maybe I'll get some advice to see if that would help. I haven't spoken to my pharmacist for a while. Maybe that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a conversation with my pharmacist just to see if anything that I'm taking could be contributing. Or maybe you've identified, yep, my mood is quite low. It's been low for a while now. I'm going to have a conversation about that. Or maybe, you know, it's not obvious, but you could have a conversation with the team at MS Connect. Anyone else want to contribute to that? Would be great. A couple more people want to respond there. Alrighty, I'll close that and I'll share the responses with everyone. So again, it's the idea that there are some things that you can do to assist, and you can be on the front foot, because really you're the person who best knows how fatigue is impacting you, what your lifestyle is like, and what you might be able to do about it. So fantastic, 47% of the group today have already identified that sleep could be a contributing factor, and I would say if you think it is, it probably is, and that's where you're going to do some investigating. Well done you. 16% both around the diet, well done, and about the low mood, fantastic. These are challenging things. You know, we really want to just be doing everything we were doing before. Why does this MS have to get in the way? But it's a reality, and good on you for identifying something that you might be able to take steps to do something about it. 11% going to have a conversation with their pharmacist, and equally 11%, not obvious at the moment, but let's keep going and see if we find something. Well done, everyone. It's great. It's great to think that not only can you come and hear my lovely dulcet tones, but you can have something to go away with and do. That's really what it's all about. All right, let's get into some strategies as well. We're going to talk about some strategies. And again, it's a challenge, but the thing we're going to suggest to you is that you need to make some changes. And that's really challenging. We don't like change. You know, we want to keep going with the things that we've been doing. But if you can identify some things that you can modify or adjust or shift, then you will find your fatigue feels more controllable, which is really the ultimate goal. And we're here to support you along the way, and there are other people that can support you as well, whether it's through the Employment Support Service if you're working, or whether it's through the NDIS and your NDIS plan, whether it's your GP. There are a whole lot of range of practitioners that are on board to help you and help you make these changes and implement these strategies. So let's have a look. The first thing we need to think about is when you've got only a certain amount of energy during the day, how are you going to prioritise between the things that are critical and the things that are, you know, superfluous maybe? This is kind of the idea of this is budgeting your energy. So this slide helps give you a bit of a grid sort of system for working out what are you doing during the day that is important and urgent. What are you doing during the day that's urgent, but actually it's not particularly important, but it somehow gets urgency attached to it, as opposed to the things that are really important for you, but maybe aren't urgent and could be done at a different time. And then there's the whole category of what are you doing that when you look at it, when you stop and think about it, it's not urgent or important. So kind of like, why am I doing it? It's really challenging, but this can be a really great tool that you could apply to the things that you're doing during the day, during the week, during the month, to maybe reprioritise what's important to you. And delegation is absolutely a key strategy here. Now, delegation often comes into the discussion when we're talking with a family. You know, you might have a partner, you might have children who can help with some of the things that you've taken on to do all the time. And maybe it's time to delegate activities and tasks to other people in your household. But some people say to me, but I don't have a family. It's just me on my own. How do I delegate anything? Well, you can still delegate activities. I delegate, particularly during COVID, but I've delegated the shopping to the Mr. Online. So Coles online or Woolies online, or getting your veggies delivered, a veggie box, all sorts of ways that you can delegate the shopping to an online activity and get it delivered. That's delegation. Delegation can also be things like having a gardener come and help with the lawns. Maybe they don't do the whole garden, but maybe they do the big jobs, or maybe they do the whole garden, depending on what you find is valuable to you. Or it might be help around the house with the housework. That's a delegation. And I had an interesting conversation recently about the psychology that goes with delegating some of those activities. I had a lady say to me, I felt really guilty having someone come and do my garden. And then we kind of did the reverse. When you notice a neighbour is having their garden done by someone, you kind of go, oh, la-di-da, they're doing well, aren't they? They're having their garden done by a gardener. So it's sometimes looking at things in a different way. So rather than feeling that you're giving in by having a task delegated, other people aren't going to be thinking that. They're going to be thinking, wow, she's got a gardener or he's got a housekeeper. So try and not think about it as a negative, but look at the positive in delegating that activity. So you've probably already had to prioritise where you spend your energy. I bet you've already stopped doing some things because your energy levels don't allow you to do it. What I would encourage you to also have a think about is, are the things that you've let go of actually some of the activities that you get a lot of value out of? And is there a way that you could perhaps delegate the things that are not as valuable to you to allow you the energy to do the things where you do find value? It's not all about having to do the awful tasks and not doing the pleasurable things. It's about using your energy in the ways that give you the most value. So I'd put that out there too. Sometimes we're left doing all the boring tasks and the mundane things, and that is not life-giving, that's zapping. So we want to readjust some of those things. So your week might look something like this. It's actually a really interesting exercise to write down the things that you do each day. Now, I haven't even included in here some of the personal care activities, or there's not a lot in here about family, but for this person, they have 3 days of work that you can see there as office. They're exercising 4 days a week. They're cooking dinner 6 nights a week. They're fitting in the housework and some socialising in there. You can see there on that grid, even some volunteering. But you'll also notice they're having 2 complete days of recovery. Now, I would suggest, and actually, no, I'm going to get you to pop in, Annie, I'm springing this on Annie. I'm going to get you to pop in that question area that Annie explained to you before. So over in your control panel where you've got the question section, I want you to pop in a number between 1 and 10 about how sustainable you think this is. So a low number is that it's not very sustainable. A high number is that it is very sustainable. How sustainable do you think this is for this person? And how satisfactory is it for the person to be doing all of this, having 2 recovery days, doing all of this stuff? Anybody want to contribute in there? 1 to 10. So 1 is the low side. It's not great. It's not sustainable. 10 is it looks really sustainable to you. Any comments coming in there, Annie?
Yeah, we've got a few, Andrea. There's a 6, a 3, a couple of 5s. There's a 2, a 4, and there's a 7, which is great. And there's another 2. 2 recovery days sounds like a dream, Susan is saying.
However, 2 recovery days means 2 days of not doing anything. I'm going to suggest that with a bit of planning, whether that's looking at a calendar like this or whether it's using a diary, you know, whatever, PDA, whatever you use, trying to get some balance between your activities so it's not all or none, so that it's not big days of high energy use followed by recovery days, and that idea of a spread, you might be able to do more during the week. So this is an alternate plan where they've broken down the tasks into more achievable parts. So you'll see some subtle differences here. The housework has changed to time limited. So only 30 minutes of vacuuming. You won't get the whole house done, but you'll do 30 minutes of vacuuming, and that's actually on 2 days now. And the laundry, again, time limited, only 30 minutes spent doing laundry, then go away and do something else. 60 minutes of housework in general, not the whole day, not to exhaustion, limiting the time that you spend doing it. Spreading some tasks over the week. So you'll see in the dinner area, a couple of times of delegating dinner. Now, delegating dinner might be buying it, or it might be looking at meal programs like Light and Easy, or what are some of the other ones? Dinnerly, yep, getting some meals organised for you. And then there's a night of cooking double dinner. So you're cooking, but you're cooking double, so the next night you can have the same thing. Some people don't like doing that, but I can see nothing wrong with that. It means the next night you're already sorted. And then the socialising night might be, again, going out for dinner. So you've that pacing activity, not feeling that you have to cook dinner every night, looking for ways that you can make that part of the week easier. You can also see there that we've built in some rest breaks and actually planned them. So instead of just a whole day of work at the office, there's a rest break at lunchtime, and we'll talk a bit more about making the most of that rest break. There's also allocated times for some activities that might end up dropping off, like the bill paying. Sometimes that gets left, and because it often comes at the end of the day when you're feeling really tired, it doesn't happen. So by allocating that a specific time, it's there to be done when you're fresh. We've cut out one of the workouts. Again, just checking in with yourself whether you're trying to do too much, and maybe just by cutting back a little bit allows you that pacing over the week. So a few subtle changes that hopefully mean that this person feels that they're not having to have those entire lost days. They're getting more done during the week and feeling like they're on top of things. So there's still some visiting with friends, there's still a bit of gardening, but there's just a bit of a readjustment of expectations. What about this time on that scale of 1 to 10? Do you think this is more sustainable than the sort of almost like the boom and bust kind of, I'll do heaps, but then I'll have to spend a day in bed? What do you think about this one? Anyone coming in, Annie, with numbers or comments?
Yes, we've got a couple of people putting in a 7 and a couple more 6s. And Susan's mentioning that this is much more manageable.
Yeah.
A couple more 7 coming in, so that's great.
Great, great. So look, it's just an example, but it's a worthwhile activity to just have a think about, how am I managing my day? How am I managing my week? So let's now move on to looking at some other ways you could, other strategies, other things to think about. Now, I was really amazed at so many people commenting on their sleep patterns. It's so important to get a good night's sleep. No two people need the same amount, so I'm not going to sit here and say you must get X number of hours. Everyone's different. But what you want to be getting is restful, undisturbed sleep. Now, we know that for people with MS, you are much more likely than the general population to experience sleep disorders and things that disturb your sleep. So sleep apneas, restless leg syndrome, those kind of things. It's really important to get them sorted out. They can be sorted. It's not like they can't be managed, but you've got to recognise them, and then you've got to go and get the help to get them sorted. So it's really important to explore. There are a whole lot of other reasons too why a person with MS might have a more disturbed night's sleep. You might be more likely to experience cramps or spasms during the night. That can be disturbing of your sleep. You're probably more likely to experience a bladder that means you're getting up to the toilet more than once a night. So if that's happening for you, I would say go and get that checked out as well, because again, that is manageable too. So are the spasms and the cramping that happens overnight. Anything that you recognise that's disturbing your sleep, you want to go and talk about so you can get some strategies in place to help manage that. And again, as I've said, we've got a whole lot of programs already that you can check out to get a bit more information. But it's things like having a regular sleep pattern, regular going to bed time, regular getting up time. The bedroom needs to be restful, the right temperature for you, the right level of light for you. And avoiding, in the whole program, you'll hear us talking about avoiding stimulating activities right before bedtime so that you've had that chance to wind down. And whenever you make changes around your sleep, it takes a while. So you need to persevere with any of the changes that you make. But check out the podcast, check out the webinar about getting a good night's sleep. And don't forget the importance of rest breaks. Now, I can't stress it enough. It's just something that we don't do. You know, we kind of go, oh, that's a nanny nap. That's for old people to have a rest break. I'm not going to have a rest break. I give you permission to have a rest break during the day. However that works for you. If you're at home and have flexibility, I would say that's even putting your feet up on the bed and having a proper break. If you're at work, it's taking that time to leave your desk and go and sit somewhere else nice and quiet. Some people are really creative and they actually go out to their car at lunchtime, put on their earbuds and listen to a relaxation or a meditation in the car, set their alarm for when they're meant to go back, and they've had that refuel, that 10-minute, what's that called when you have a power nap, that kind of idea. Can be really helpful, really hard. I recognise that, and I'm not saying it's easy, but the first thing is giving yourself permission to rest and then thinking about where you're going to rest and when. Big rests, to me, big rests are not as good as having small 10-minute rests during the day that help you keep your energy going. So not waiting until you're exhausted to have your rest break, but putting them in regularly so it keeps your energy levels up. So I'm going to ask a question, or Annie, do you want to ask this one and I'll stop talking for a second?
Sure. Now, and the question is, do you currently rest? And the possible responses: no, there's no time for resting. No, if I rest, people will think I'm, oops, something's in my screen. I'm lazy. No, I haven't even considered it. Or yes, I rest for 3 hours every afternoon. Yes, I regularly stop for a cuppa and do a crossword. So once again, if you can hover your mouse over the possible responses, and if there's something else that you do to rest, feel free to type it into the questions area. All right, so I can see that we've got about half of you who have responded so far, so we'll give it another minute or so, or a few seconds rather. Okay, that's looking great. All right, thanks for responding, everyone. I'll close that and I'll share it with everyone. Okay, so you can see there that 19% do not rest because they think that people might think that they are lazy. 25% rest for 3 hours every afternoon, and the majority of you rest, you have a cuppa and maybe do a crossword. And I'll just check if anyone's written anything else in. So Susan's mentioning that she sits in her recliner and watches watches TV sometimes, and Gail often stops for a rest, but it's not that regular.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, and thank you for your honesty with that too, because it can be really challenging to have a rest break. So for the person that says, for the people that recognise that they recognise in themselves that they don't rest because they think people will think they're lazy, we need to overcome that. So we've got to come up with a way of you seeing that as something that, and you're allowed to say, Andrea told me that I have to have a rest break. If I told you to take a tablet, you'd take it. But so I'm telling you, you need to have a rest break. But it doesn't have to be, and again, I'm sorry for the people that have said, yes, they have 3 hours on every afternoon. It doesn't have to be 3 hours. The evidence has shown that short, regular rest breaks are more, I can't say this word, recuperative. They help you recover and recuperate better than the big rest break. But that depends on what life is like for you. If you can have 3 hours rest each day and it's not impacting on the other things you want to do, that's fabulous. But for a lot of us, having that big chunk of time isn't possible. So I'm encouraging you that the short 10-minute power nap type concept works very well as well. And I'm also going to throw out a challenge that having a rest break is different to doing something differently. So for the people that recognise their rest break is having a cuppa and doing the crossword, I'm going to say that a full rest break doesn't even do the cuppa and the crossword, because when you're doing the crossword or the Sudoku or watching the telly, you're still having the cognitive activity going that doesn't let you fully rest. So a full rest break would be resting body and mind. Now, any or all of it is fine. It all depends on your situation and what works for you. But if you are still, despite your cuppa and crossword, or despite your 3 hours on the bed, finding that you're not doing all the activities that you want to do because of your fatigue, that's when we need to just sort of rejig it and rethink about it. So I'm actually not going to run the next poll just yet. We might run that later, because I'm going to talk about how to make the most of your rest break. And I would say that's by using a relaxation or a mindfulness technique. So, you know, you will be really familiar with all these words. Whether or not you practice any of these techniques, you would have heard of them. So I love things like the Smiling Minds app, and there are other apps that you might get that you can download if you've got a smartphone that have different length of time relaxation or meditation techniques. So they can be 2 minutes long, they can be 10 minutes long. Whatever you've got, you can find one where you are guided to relax, to breathe, to let everything else go and just focus on relaxing. Because I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I give myself that permission to have that rest break and I sit down to just rest, that's when my brain kicks into gear and I'm going, oh, I meant to make that phone call before I sat down. Oh, I should have got that chicken out to defrost for tea. So my brain starts going. I absolutely need something that allows me to have a proper rest break. So let's have a little go at one just for, it'll be 20 seconds if that, right now. So I'm going to say, close your eyes, uncross your legs, put things out of your hands, and just take 3 lovely deep breaths. Breathing in through your nose, pausing at the top, and then breathing out slowly through your mouth, making the outward breath longer than the inward breath. So you might want to add some counting to this. So breathe into the count of 4, hold it for the count of 4, and breathe out for the count of 6. And then hold it out for the count of 4 before breathing in again. Just do that once or twice, making your outward breath longer than your inward breath. Breathing in through your nose, pausing, and then breathing out through your mouth, sighing that out. Even with those 3 or 4 breaths, did you feel that you were starting to relax? Oh, Annie says yes, she did. That's great. And it's often having the counting that means you let other stuff go because you're focusing on what you're doing with your breath. That's a tiny technique, but that's just an example of a way that you can use a tool to help you make the most of your rest break. And you might want to check out a program at a neighbourhood house or something at your community health centre where they run relaxation or mindfulness techniques. We've got a mindfulness online program starting in, Annie, April?
In March.
March.
The 15th.
So join in something online if that would work for you as well.
And Sally Ann's mentioned that she finds that the Pilates is great for breathing.
Great, yes.
As well. So
yes. And the more of these techniques that you can learn, the more you've got to make the most of your rest breaks and really feel the benefit of them. That's great. So I said we'd mentioned diet and lifestyle kind of stuff before. Just again, in a nutshell, when you're thinking about your fatigue, and I'm sorry, I'm not aware of the time, so tell me if we're running out of time. Cool, okay. If we're thinking about how to minimize our experience of fatigue, we want to think about things like making sure we're drinking enough water, making sure we're eating breakfast so that we're starting the day and fueling our body regularly throughout the day, that we're making sure we're eating proteins and carbs in combination. Now, the idea of that and the low GI foods is, again, sustained energy, not having peaks and troughs, but trying to have energy that sustains our activity during the day. A salad at lunchtime with a bit of chicken or a bit of salmon or tuna will give us more sustained energy than just a salad on its own for the afternoon. And then there's things like making sure we've had our iron levels checked, so there's not something else that's contributing to our experience of fatigue. And then there's just a couple of comments around, when you have a really big meal, the Christmas Day phenomenon, when you have that really big meal and then all you want to do is sleep in the afternoon. So we want to minimise the big meals. We want to minimise caffeine, because even though caffeine sort of gives us that pep up, it also drops suddenly and it can impact our sleep. So it can actually be a negative. And there's the same with the impact of alcohol, that it can be a stimulant for some people or in some ways, but it also can be quite not good for your fatigue levels overall. So that's just worth having a think about. As is keeping active. Now, I know I said earlier on, it's double Dutch to tell you to keep active when you're feeling fatigued, but all the evidence, and I'm sorry to say that it's growing evidence, tells us that keeping active, physical activity actually helps reduce our experience of fatigue. So the more you can get out and be active, the better you'll feel in general. And it's for your non-MS healthy body, but it's also for your MS symptoms as well. But if your MS symptoms are stopping you from exercising, that's where you want to get some advice. Now, again, I can't spend a lot of time on it today, but there are a whole lot of resources on our website to help you keep active, or it might be that you need to see a physiotherapist or an exercise physiologist to just get some advice for how you can increase your physical activity. And we do know that group programs are you're more likely to sustain a group activity than you are to do it yourself at home. And I certainly know that's true for me. I need the prompt of needing to go somewhere or some people expecting me to be there. I don't exercise on my own, and even at the moment it's my little dog. He's the one that tells me it's time now to go for a walk when he looks at me expectantly, and it helps me get out. So thinking about what you're doing and where you're exercising, making sure that you're also managing the heat intolerance. There are lots of ways we can help overcome the barriers that stop you exercising, but I can't say it strongly enough, the importance of getting out and doing some regular exercise.
Just on that, Andrea, a couple of comments comes through.
Yeah.
Sally has mentioned that exercise physiology and Pilates have helped with her fatigue.
Fantastic.
And also her balance and her strength.
Yes, yes.
And Sally also does intermittent fasting, and she believes for her that that's helping with her MS symptoms.
That's great. That's great. Hey, and a comment about the balance type stuff too. If we're not making sure we're addressing our balance or our mobility problems, we're actually working harder to maintain balance, and that's fatiguing. So that adds to the cycle as well. So it is so important to do those activities that help maintain our balance, keep us mobile, so that we're not putting more energy into the day-to-day activities that we're doing. So thank you, Sally Ann. That's fabulous. That's fabulous. And this time of year, particularly in summer, most people do recognise that heat worsens their fatigue. Not true for everyone, but for a lot of people, heat makes it worse. So keep your house cool, stay hydrated, lots of cool drinks. Think about the clothing that you're wearing, lightweight, loose clothing. They tell us, though, that it's also really important to cool our bodies from the outside. So this is where, a cooling necktie or wearing a cooling vest can be really helpful for people with MS. And if that's not something you're familiar with, again, check out our website or give MS Connect a call to find out a bit more about some of the strategies that you can use for cooling. I think there's a podcast and a webinar recording on coping with the heat that could be worth checking out. So we've come to the end. Just in summary, I'm going to remind you that MS fatigue is different to normal fatigue, and people with MS experience both. I'm going to again remind you to think about, could the fatigue that you're currently experiencing be being caused by something else? Maybe have you got an infection? An MS relapse can cause a dramatic change in your fatigue. So if your fatigue changes dramatically, have a little think about what else might be going on. Or maybe your fatigue is also a side effect of a medication like we talked about before. From the things we've talked about today, can you identify that there are some things in your life that you could change to maybe improve your fatigue? Then I'm going to suggest that you might need to seek specialist help. That might be via MS Connect, or it might be through your local health professionals, through your GP, through your neurologist, to get some specialist advice and specific advice for your situation around your fatigue. And then I'm also going to just encourage you that any changes you make, you need to persist with, because it can take time to reap the benefits. It's not going to happen straight away, but with some persistence and with not doing everything at once, that's really hard, but making some little changes one at a time, you might find that they make a great deal of benefit for your fatigue. I'm going to let you know about a program called FACETS. This is it stands for Fatigue, Applying Cognitive, Behavioural and Energy Effectiveness Techniques to Lifestyle. Interesting way that they got FACETS out of that, but we won't argue that. But it's a group program. It's a program that was developed in the UK, and it's designed to help you learn to manage your fatigue. So there are a couple of ways you can participate in this program, because it's available online. You don't actually need to do it with us. You can do it yourself. But if you express interest, now this is probably better access through our website, but if you express interest, we can send you the details on how you can access either a program that we're running or a program, or the online program that you can do in your own time. So either way, it's good information and a good program to connect to. So a reminder too that the Employment Support Service, if you're working, the Employment Support Service is a fabulous support to help you keep working, and particularly if you're experiencing fatigue related to your employment, lots of strategies that the team there can help you with. And same with NDIS, writing into your NDIS plan some ways to help manage your fatigue can be really useful. That's that idea of the delegating the garden or the household activities to someone else that your plan can help you pay for. But give MS Connect a call. And maybe for you, it would be the support of some other people living with MS that might make a huge difference. So I would strongly recommend our wonderful peer support program. On the screen there, you can see Kat and Kim and Ange, who are our peer support coordinators, and they can connect you either to some one-on-one phone support or connect you to some face-to-face groups, or at this time, particularly the tele groups that meet by phone, and support each other and give each other tips and advice, sharing strategies, sharing approaches. There's lots of support available for you. So your take-home strategies for today are, I'd love you to consider minimising the contributing factors that could be adding to your fatigue. I really want you to think about planning, prioritising and pacing, that idea of spreading things over the week and not getting the highs and lows, but getting the more sustained energy through the week. I'd love you to think about your sleep and rest. I'd love you to consider implementing some relaxation techniques or using the ones that you already know. I want you to have a think about your diet and your lifestyle, your fitness and strength, that all could be contributing to your fatigue, some tweaks and adjustments that might help make a difference, and whether heat is having an impact for you. Maybe it's, you know, putting a jug of water on your desk so that you drink more during the day. Maybe it's thinking about the purchase of a cooling vest so that you can do more outside when it's warm. Maybe it's as simple as buying an electric can opener, because that will minimise things in the kitchen. Or maybe it's explaining to a few more people the impact of fatigue for you, so that they don't keep hassling you about why you don't come out with them on the weekends, or why you always say you'll come and then you don't. They need to understand a bit better what's going on for you. Or maybe it's connecting to an OT, occupational therapist, around some specific strategies for you. Whatever it is, I hope that there's something that you're going away to follow up. You know, my worst is that you say, yep, that was great, see you, I'll see you at the next one. I'd really love you to have something that you're going to follow up that will make a difference for you. So, Annie, we're up to questions.
Okay, great. Just a couple of comments that have come through from Susan about rest breaks. She has mentioned that she struggles to commit to rest breaks at work.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned the ESS program, and that might be something that she could approach and
Absolutely.
get assistance with disclosing her diagnosis, etc., and for them to understand.
But even if you don't disclose, you might not want everyone at work to know, but you might be able to put in your diary a rest break. You might call it something different. You might call it an appointment, and the appointment is with yourself to have 15 minutes where you sit somewhere privately that you can have that little rest break. It is thinking creatively. For some people, and this applies whether you're at work or not, it's arriving 10, 15 minutes early for an appointment so that you give yourself that little space before that next thing. So that could be somewhere that you identify in your office that you could book and go to for 10 or 15 minutes. If you're out and about, it could be arriving 10, 15 minutes early and staying in the car. It could be before you pick up the kids from school, you've factored in a buffer of 15 minutes. Again, it might be in the car. So thinking creatively, how could I build in a rest break a couple of times during the day, putting it in your diary, so then when someone says, can I see you at 10 o'clock? You say, oh, look, I've already got something in my diary at 10 o'clock. They don't have to know what it is, but, you know, it's already kind of ring fenced so that you protect that time. But at the same time, we totally acknowledge it's really challenging. So, yeah, that's great. Thanks for that comment.
Another comment about when taking rest breaks, and Susan's husband walks in the door and he works so hard and long hours, etc. He finds it hard to see that she's fatigued,
yeah,
particularly when she doesn't look fatigued.
Oh, totally. You look so well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bring him along to one of the fatigue programs to find out a bit more about how fatigue impacts you, because it's an invisible symptom, and it's the invisible ones that people really struggle to understand, and that they fluctuate. That's really hard as well. So yeah, mate, yeah, get him along. Get him to listen to one of the podcasts or the recordings. That would be great. Set him the challenge.
Great tips. Sally Ann's identified that she has low iron levels, which is meant an iron infusion.
Absolutely, and that would totally add to your fatigue experience. Yeah.
Gail would like to investigate the FACETS program, so Gail, I'll email you the link to register or to express your interest in.
Or just let me know, and
Yes.
We'll don't need to do that. I
all right.
Follow that up.
We've got that all covered, Gail. No problem.
But remind me.
Yeah. Stuart's mentioned that he finds a 15-minute rest break at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock is best.
Stuart, fantastic.
However, he has had problems with his NDIS application, so that's not good to hear, Stuart. perhaps a phone call to MS Connect, and they might be able to, or they should be able to, direct you to one of our NDIS support coordinators to give you a hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Juno's mentioned that she's really pleased to know that her fatigue is due to her MS. And she says it's been in her 20s. It's a bit tricky, not being able to get out and do things with her friends. So that's always a challenge.
Absolutely.
But good on you for recognising that, Juno, and giving yourself that acceptance, and allow yourself to have those rest breaks, etc.
Yeah. So, and that's a really good point. You might have addressed, and I'd probably say that we can always revisit the contributing factors, but if you feel you've addressed every contributing factor that could be adding to your fatigue, really in a perfect world, what you're left with is the MS fatigue. And it's very hard to actually, distinguish the two, but there is certainly fatigue that is caused by having MS. There's sort of a few schools of thought on that. There's the idea that because your body is combating an autoimmune disease, there is a fatigue element because of that. Like when we have the flu, we feel exhausted, and that's the body's way of telling us we've got to go to bed and recover. So there's that kind of theory that is going on because your body is already fighting the MS. But then there's all the overlay of everything else that happens. It's quite complicated.
Definitely. Sally Ann has mentioned that her MS employment, so the ESS program, has actually funded her Pilates and
fantastic
therapy.
That's great.
So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Sally Ann said, "Thank you very much, Andrea. Some really great tips."
Right.
So it doesn't look like there's any further questions that have come through, but if we happen to have missed anything, please send us an email through to MS Connect, and we'll respond to you as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And just as we finish off, you've got this in your handout, but there are some other tools online on our website that you might want to explore. Get Your Act Together was actually developed for the ACT, but apart from the agencies that it will list that are all in the ACT, there are a whole lot of strategies and tips and tricks from people living with MS around managing different symptoms. So check that one out. There are ebooks. If you're into ebooks, we've got some ebooks on our library, and some of those relate to fatigue or sleep. And I mentioned the podcasts a couple of times on our website. And MS Connect. Just don't ever feel that you can't call MS Connect, even if it's after hours. Leave a message and the team will get back to you the following day. But it's a great resource, and we're all here to help. So thanks everyone. Thanks Annie for your help today.
No worries. Thank you, Andrea, for presenting that. It was really great. And just before we finish, just one last question. I know we're over time, but this might be helpful to everyone online. Melanie's mentioned that her fatigue shows up as brain fog.
Yeah.
And it's exacerbated.
That's that cognitive fatigue. Yes, absolutely.
So she's asking for some strategies.
But it's the same thing, Melanie. It's the planning, and it's the trying to minimise your fatigue in other areas to allow you to be able to think clearly. But then it's also recognising that if you're worse in the afternoon, you want to do your thinking tasks in the morning. So that's why on that example of the week, we had the bill paying in the morning, not leaving the bill paying till the afternoon when it's harder to think, putting that when you're at your freshest. So it's also about working around your fatigue as well, because that's that neuromuscular kind of fatigue, or the nerve fiber fatigue, having an impact on your cognition. So the same strategies apply: pacing, rest breaks, and prioritising, so you're doing things at your freshest. It applies whether it's to physical things or to cognitive things. But yes, that brain fog is definitely a cognitive fatigue.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. It was great to have you with us. We hope we see you again at our next webinar. Take care. Bye for now.